When the Spanish broke the siege at Cusco, Manco moved his capital, the Inca capital, to this location, Ollantaytambo. Ollantaytambo is not very far from Cusco, and as you can see, it is a very, very steep hill. And the Inca put their fortifications, their soldiers, their warriors, up on that hill and on those terraces. And there must have been thousands upon thousands of them. And the Spanish attacked them. There were only about 200 Spanish, as you'll recall, and of course their Indian allies. But the Spanish made the cutting edge of that army. But this was the first time, the only real time, the Inca turned back the Spanish at Ollantaytambo. The conquistadors were then reinforced by Spanish troops that had been down in Chile occupying that area. And with those reinforcements, Manco was forced to retire from Ollantaytambo, and he went to Vilcabamba, which is deeper in the jungle. Vilcabamba was the last capital of the Incas. The Spanish located it, and eventually they defeated the Inca rebellion, but the location of the Vilcabamba was lost. And that brings us to 1911 and Hiram Bingham, who was searching for the Vilcabamba, and he happened to stumble on to Machu Picchu. Unlike Hiram Bingham, we're going to be going to Machu Picchu by train. Curiously enough, this train line was laid down and designed in 1908, several years before Machu Picchu was discovered. Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu had been lost to the Spaniards. It had been occupied during Inca times up until about the time that the Spanish came in. Now, Machu Picchu had been lost for as far as the civilized world was concerned up until 1911. Then Hiram Bingham, who was out here looking for Vilcabamba, happened to stumble across it and think it was Vilcabamba. Vilcabamba was the last capital city of the Incas. The Spanish knew about that. They had attacked Vilcabamba and taken it. But then they had lost track of where Vilcabamba was located. Hiram Bingham started looking for it. Now, when he found Machu Picchu, at first he thought it was Vilcabamba, the last capital city of the Incas. But there were a couple of other explanations for Machu Picchu as well. First of all, it's very small. So there was some thought that it might be the first city rather than the last city of the Incas. Although we're fairly sure it wasn't the first city, because after all, Cusco was, according to their legends, the first city of the Incas. There was a third possibility, and that was that it could possibly have been the place where the women that were dedicated to the sun god, the virgins of the sun, stayed. And when Hiram Bingham came back in 1912, he brought with him an anthropologist, and the anthropologist examined some bodies that were found here. There were a number of them, about 100, and he determined that 80% of those were women. Now, based on that, it was thought that this might possibly be the location of the Virgins of the Sun. However, just a few years ago, those bones were re-examined. And anthropologists now believe that 80% was not the correct figure. It was roughly 50-50. and some of the women had given birth. So it's unlikely that this was the location of the Virgins of the Sun. So the question is, what is Machu Picchu? Machu Picchu is generally described as being divided between an urban sector, which you see here, where the buildings are, and an agricultural sector, that is, where these terraces are located. The problem with Machu Picchu as a city is that those residences appear to be capable of housing roughly 300 people. On the other hand, if you take a look at the terraces, many of which are in the urban area, not in the agricultural area as it was defined, those terraces are only capable of feeding a few dozen people, not much more. Certainly not the 300 that could be housed here. So on any kind of regular basis, when the city was full of people, food, and probably other substances as well, would had to have been brought into the city from very, very far away. And those terraces are a very complex construction. They're built out of stone, of course, on the face, but it's the inside of the terrace that's really most interesting. There's coarse gravel down at the bottom with finer gravel as you go up near the top. And finally, it's topped off with topsoil. And that topsoil, at least, had to be carried up all the way from the river below, about 1,000 feet below this particular point. Now, why go to all this trouble for those terraces? Well, the Inca knew that this area, in fact virtually all of the core Inca area, gets very heavy rainfall, some 90 inches per year. The result of that is that the soil has a strong tendency to wash away just about everywhere, and that would be especially true here at Machu Picchu. In this particular case, those terraces are important not just for agricultural purposes, but like claws, they tend to anchor the city onto the mountain. If it hadn't been for those terraces, engineers say that these buildings, almost all of them, would be down on the river floor by now. Some 60% of the Inca work at Machu Picchu is actually underground, and much of it has to do with hydrology, driving the water away from the buildings and protecting the buildings from erosion. One of the memorable things about Machu Picchu is that it has about 100 flights of stairs, and I think frankly that I have climbed just about every one of them that's there. Notice that the Inca almost always used the post and lintel door construction system, the large stone at the top going across both sides of the door. This happens to be the high rent district in Machu Picchu. This is probably where some noble people lived, or perhaps even Inca princesses. Now what we're focusing on next is going to be the route up to Machu Picchu that you take today. Down the valley floors where the train stops, and from the train normally you will pick up a bus. Now it is possible to hike up to the top, but most people take the bus, and the bus takes that little switchback road. You can see that little white line in the on the mountain. It goes back and forth and back and forth, and that's how the bus gets up to Machu Picchu. But Bingham didn't come up that way. Instead, he came up the other side of the mountain, starting from that river valley down there, where he found a farmer that told him that there was something up here, and the farmer's 12-year-old boy led him up this steep cliff right here, all the way up to the top, and that's the first time that he saw any of the ruins at Machu Picchu. This next building should remind you of the back of the Coricancha, because like the back of the Coricancha, this is a solar observatory for discovering when the solstice occurs. Underneath it, there's sort of a little artificial cave, and inside there is a sacrificial table. We were told that it was usually used for sacrificing llamas, although there is some indication that human sacrifice was carried on with the Incas, although not with the frequency as with the Aztecs. The solar observatory has the odd shape that it does in order to get the sun's shadow to reflect in the right way to allow them to predict the solstices. And that's why it's not perfectly round. In back, those little niches were used for storage, somewhat like closets.
Again, using the wooden door, then a tree trunk in an horizontal shape in here that they hide with a rope, and they pass through these holes. All right. Another tree trunk is standing up, and it was tied to the ring stone that we can see at the top of the lintel.
Heck of a lot.
That I told you, only 2 doorways in Machu Picchu have these carvings. The rest of the doorways don't.
Notice that the doorways tend to lean in. In fact, all of the walls in the Inca buildings tend to lean in, and that's part of a design. It's to help earthquake-proof the building. In addition, when they build, they frequently don't use regular stones. They make irregular stones fit into the wall, and that once again gives the wall more stability than it would have if the stones were dressed exactly the way the Romans or the Greeks or somebody else might have done them, in perfectly regular rows. This is the famous hitching post of the sun, or sometimes it's referred to as a sundial, although frankly it doesn't tell the time of day, but rather the time of year.
And it's up here where Incas carved this stone, still for astronomical purposes. This is the stone that is very well known as the sundial. And the Incas again projected shadows with using the corners and the angles of this stone. But we can see that the stone also has 4 corners, that each one again is pointing to the 4 directions of the world. North, west, south, and east. And this small one, that it was the one that was making a perfect shadow line in on 21st of June, to this another angle. And from here, the sunlight we're getting to this rock, okay, that was carved also by the Incas. Look at it. Looks like a guinea pig head. Who was asking for the guinea pig? Well, for the researchers that found these shadows, this is a puma shape, a puma head. And right in here we can see the eye that was carved also in the stone. So it's in this side that the Incas projected perfectly the North Triangle constellation with the sunlight that they could see only every 21st of June. But the question is, how did the Incas know about the North Triangle constellation, because it's a constellation that we don't see in South America? So they knew also constellations that we don't see in this continent. No? That's why these steps that were made in here for the astronomer that would watch or observe these shadows. All right? Because these steps are not to get to the terracings. We'll find other steps that are getting to the terracings. This one, it was for this reason. But I said that this stone was. Why in past tense? Because 3 years ago, a beer company came to Machu Picchu to film a commercial. And they stand up in here a bottle of beer. And with the big equipment that they were filming, they crashed the top of the. Look at that. Exactly the one that is making the shadow line and project over there. The shadows. It's ruined. It's ruined because the rest of the stones were not fit anymore. They are not going to fit anymore. Of the fountains. Or ceremonial baths, as Hiram Bingham name. But actually these were not baths to take a shower or to take a bath, these were fountains. Because the same water is flowing through all of them and going lower. What would happen if somebody would take a shower up here? The water would flow totally dirty. So these were fountains where Incas have to get the water in containers for washing, cooking, cleaning up, etc. But look at what a beautiful work Incas made when they carved these channels. And look at here.
As I said earlier, a lot of the construction at Machu Picchu has to do with hydrology. The fountain system that happens to be here is a major piece of work for as far as the Inca are concerned. Although not quite up to Roman standards, this is quite an impressive piece of aqueduct. It was sufficiently impressive that I started tracing back the water because I wanted to see where that water came from. And we're going to trace it back. We're going to walk back along the terraces and along where the fountains are until we locate the source of the water. And the source of the water that I discovered was something of a surprise to the guide, because I told the guide that I traced the water all the way back to a corrugated metal pipe. The fact of the matter is that water is supposed to have been coming through an Inca channel, and that's what the guide had thought. But in fact, the water at Machu Picchu doesn't come from the original source, at least not directly. One of the things that you've probably noticed is that a number of the houses at Machu Picchu would look almost perfect if they had their thatch roofs on, and you might have wondered how those were attached. That little stone up there with the hole in it is the way that the roof was attached to the stonework. And you can see that on this particular house, on each side of where the roof should be, there are a couple of those little stone eyes. And in addition to that, you can also see what appears to be a cylindrical stone that's used to lash the thatch roof on. And that cylindrical stone kind of looks like it probably is representing some kind of a log. In any event, that's the way that those thatched roofs are put on. Now, the guide told me that those thatched roofs actually only lasted about a year. And every year that grass had to be changed out. And then I told the guide that in Europe, thatched roofs may last about a century. And the difference is that in Europe they use water plants for the thatching, and here they were using simple grass. In the next scene we see the underside of a thatched roof, and you'll be seeing how that roof is constructed, how the poles are arranged, and how they are lashed together. Next, we're going to be taking a short walk away from Machu Picchu down one of the old Inca trails, or more correctly, up one of the old Inca trails. And what we're going to be looking for is an Inca bridge. Now, this is basically a stone bridge that has a wooden drawbridge on it. But I'm panning down from the top of the mountain because I want to show you how sheer the cliff is that bridge is located on. And I want you to remember when we get down to the bridge that you're not nearly at the bottom of the mountain. There's still 1,000 feet to go or more before you get down to the river below. You can see the bridge now. It's that stonework in the center of the picture, and the wooden slats that are referred to as the drawbridge are up at the top.
In here, these professors try to explain how Incas cut the stones. And what they explain, is the same technique that, as Egyptians made. Following the natural fissures, these professors employed harder stones. They made holes along the fissure, then they fitted wood, they watered the wood expanded, and then the rock split. So this is an experiment that worked because the rock was broken. Look at here, half of these carvings. And this is the half of this rock. But there is an exception in the case of the Incas.
There's no holes there.
Exactly. In all quarries that we can see in Cusco, we don't find these remains. Somebody was saying, oh, that's probably why Incas carved around the corners. Yeah, this is understandable for the ones that they used for their buildings, but why they should smooth the stones that they wouldn't use anymore and they left in the quarries? Like in this stone. This is a clear example. See this? Incas also took pieces from here, all the smooth, here another piece. So later there were theories also of other researchers that were saying that Incas melted the stones with some herbs, wild herbs probably that is growing in these mountains. But the herbs were not found. So this is not possible. There is nothing that can melt the stones. Yeah. Right. But still many speculations and theories because there was not a writing of how Incas cut the stones, built the...
So, now we're back to our original question. What is Machu Picchu? What is the purpose for Machu Picchu? Well, anthropologists, archaeologists, all argued about this for a very long time. It turns out, however, that the lawyers knew the answer. Yes, that's right. You see, shortly after the Spanish took control of this area, still back in the 16th century, there was a court case in Cusco. And in that court case, descendants of Pachacuti were suing some other natives that were up here in these ruins. And they're suing for the ownership of the land. And it was those descendants that proved that this place was owned by Pachacuti. And you can tell that from the court records. Well, so what was it used for? This was basically Camp David. This is where the Inca came in order to relax. This was his winter residence because although Cusco is at 11,000 feet, Machu Picchu is only at 8,000 feet, and it's a little bit warmer here. All kinds of people come to Machu Picchu for all kinds of reasons, and some of those reasons are kind of different, at least from my perspective. The guide is about ready to tell us a story. It's a story that I had never heard before, and it's a story that you'll have to listen closely to because even I wasn't paying very much attention to this story when it started.
There is a story on the site we came but always downstairs of a Californian man that came to Machu Picchu with a spiritual group to make some spiritual things. And when they were going up in the opposite way we came, he was the last one on the line, and he started to hear the voice of a spirit that was telling him or saying him, "Ja." And He jumped.
Oh.
He jumped. It was 150 feet down, but he felt nothing happened. And he still kept listening the voice. Jump again, and he responded to the spirit. No, I'm scared. Trust me, the spirit told him. So he jumped another 150 feet down. It's a true story.
Oh.
How would they know?
It was in 1997. So for third time, again nothing happened. For third time the spirit told him jump, and this man said, no, I'm afraid. Trust me. And he jumped again for third time. And when he was flying just for a second, he doubted. And he fell down 600 feet down. Well, he survived. He only broke his left ankle, but the worst thing for him was the rescue that took 3 days. And he was dehydrated, no clothes, because he was just wearing short pants and a t-shirt. And the first day, nobody knew where was he. Everybody thought that he was probably in a disco or somewhere else. So the guide just reported to the policeman that he didn't sleep, and the policeman also told the tour guide that maybe it's somewhere, because people do that in the village. Yes. And finally, there was a dog that was barking in the little houses that we could see. No? Because this man was screaming at 10 in the morning, help me, because he couldn't climb up here. And the dogs barking and barking, that the family finally decided to come out to see what was happening, and they saw him. So they had to walk along the railroad around this mountain to the police station that they already were communicated that this man was lost. So they came. It was already 4 in the afternoon. When they saw him, it was 5 in the afternoon. So they called, hello, how are you? Help me, please. I need water, I need to be helped. We will come back tomorrow. It was already the second day. It rained the night that he spent in the cliff. And then the third day, a helicopter that was transporting also tourists to Machu Picchu was contracted to make the rescue. So the policemen came. No ropes, no rescue equipment to come down, from the helicopter. So the helicopter had to come back to Cusco, and policemen went to the fire station, because the rescue team we have in Cusco is in the fire station, okay, firefighters. And they said, we need that you lend your ropes and all your equipment, carabiners, aids, etc., etc. And they said, yeah, we can lend it to you, but one of us must go with you to check how the equipment is being used. Okay, and policemen, no, we are going to use, you have to give us. So the commander came. It was all a big problem that they were discussing for about 4 hours. Imagine this, 4 hours. And finally, at 2 in the afternoon, policemen went to the fire station and they said, okay, we are going to take one of you. No, this time will be 2. Oh, no, la. Yeah, 2 of you, let's go. They came. It was 4 in the afternoon. So the firefighters prepared all the equipment, throw the rope to rappel, and they told to the policeman, okay, he's ready, go ahead. So one of them, the bravest one apparently, went to the doorway of the helicopter. He looked down there, and he just, you are the professionals, you must go. So one of them jumped, and he picked this man up, and they got to the top of this mountain, with the rope is still flying, and they finally in the helicopter. And this is the story that he told me, because I talked to him, and he told me about the spirits. So it's not something that I am just inventing or somebody.
California. Where else?
All the crazy people are from.
Yeah, but how could he not have been
He
injured?
went
more
to
than
the
that?
United States
Yeah.
back, and he later returned to Peru after 2 months, And he said that he was having nightmares, he couldn't sleep, so he decided to come back again to Machu Picchu. And he lived in Peru for about a year. And after 6 years, when he was cured of this affrighment, he happened, with spiritual man. Finally, later he opened his tour agency in Aguascalientes, in the village. So he was selling tours also. We were joking that it was, the spirit's jump or something like that.